It's 3:17 a.m. The house is silent, except for the sound of slow footsteps moving down the hallway. A man in a ski mask enters a child's bedroom. He's calm, controlled, every motion calculated. He doesn't rush. He doesn't shake. He's not here for money, not for revenge. He's here because he wants to be. By sunrise, the city will be in shock, a family destroyed, a community terrified. And the only trace he leaves behind is the question that will haunt detectives for years. Why? What drives a person to commit an act so cruel, yet so deliberate? What happens inside the mind when morality is silenced and darkness takes control? Tonight, we step into the shadows of human psychology and enter the place most of us fear to go, inside the criminal mind. Timeline. Criminal behavior has always fascinated and horrified us in equal measure. For centuries, philosophers, doctors, and later psychologists have asked the same question: are criminals born or made? In the 19th century, Italian criminologist Cesare Lombroso believed he'd found the answer. He claimed that criminals were biological throwbacks, people marked by physical traits, slanted foreheads, sharp jaws, large ears, that made them predisposed to crime. He believed they were less evolved, almost primitive. Of course, his theories were later discredited, but his obsession with patterns laid the groundwork for something bigger, a new science dedicated to understanding what drives people to break society's most sacred rules. By the mid-20th century, psychology and neuroscience had entered the scene. Researchers began looking not at faces, but at minds. They discovered that certain individuals, the ones who could commit acts of unimaginable cruelty, shared common traits: a lack of empathy, an absence of guilt, a thirst for control. And thus began the modern search for what we now call the criminal mind. The criminal brain. Deep inside the brain, three regions often tell the story. The amygdala, where emotions like fear and empathy are born. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of logic, judgment, and impulse control. And the reward system, a network of dopamine pathways that make us feel pleasure. In ordinary people, these systems work together, emotion and reason balancing each other. But in some criminals, that balance collapses. Brain scans of violent offenders have revealed reduced activity in the prefrontal cortex, the part that says, "Stop, don't do this." Meanwhile, their amygdala, the part that lets us feel fear or compassion, is often smaller or less active. The result? A person who can calculate every move, but feels almost nothing while doing it. In one groundbreaking study, neuroscientist Dr. Adrian Raine examined the brains of convicted murderers. He found that their emotional regulation was disrupted. They could plan, manipulate, and execute, but had no emotional break to stop themselves. It's not that they don't know what's wrong. They just don't care. The investigation. Mind hunters. In the 1970s, the FBI faced a terrifying problem: serial killers. Murders without clear motive, crimes that crossed states, and patterns that defied logic. Detectives couldn't rely on witnesses or confessions. They needed to understand the mindset. So in 1977, two FBI agents, John Douglas and Robert Ressler, began something revolutionary: the Behavioral Science Unit. They traveled across the U.S., interviewing dozens of serial killers, trying to map how they thought. They asked questions no one had dared to ask before. What were you feeling before the murder? Why that victim? What made you stop? Their research gave birth to criminal profiling, a way to predict behavior by understanding the psychology behind it. They discovered patterns. Organized killers, meticulous, intelligent, often charming. Disorganized killers, impulsive, chaotic, often mentally ill. And underneath it all, a shared craving for power. When asked why they killed, many said the same chilling thing. Because I could. That line, simple, cold, and terrifying, revealed something fundamental. For some, the crime wasn't about gain or revenge. It was about the feeling. The psychological angle. So, what drives someone to that point? Psychologists divide motivation into three major categories: biological, psychological, and social. Biological factors include genetics, hormones, and neurological conditions. Studies have shown that people with certain variants of the MAOA gene, nicknamed the warrior gene, may be more prone to aggression when exposed to abuse or trauma. Psychological factors often stem from early experiences. Many violent offenders report childhood neglect, physical abuse, or emotional rejection. These early wounds distort empathy and create deep resentment.
And then there's the social factor, the environment that shapes what behavior is rewarded or punished. In communities where violence equals survival or power equals respect, the line between right and wrong blurs. When all three collide, biology, psychology, and environment, something emerges that is both predictable and horrifying. A human being who knows exactly what they're doing, but feels nothing while doing it. Case examples. To understand the mind of such individuals, let's look at two extremes. Ted Bundy, perhaps the most infamous of all, was intelligent, educated, and charming. He confessed to killing over 30 women across multiple states. But what fascinated psychologists most wasn't just his crimes. It was his composure. Bundy showed no empathy, no remorse. He spoke about his murders as if recounting a business transaction. Psychiatrists called him a textbook psychopath, a person whose emotional life was replaced by imitation. He could mimic emotion, smile, cry, flirt, but it was performance, not feeling. Then there's Richard Kuklinski, the Iceman, a contract killer who claimed to have murdered over 100 people. He described killing as a job. He could eat dinner with his family hours after a murder, perfectly calm. When asked if he ever felt guilt, he replied, "No, it was business. They were in the way." Two very different men, but both shared the same psychological fingerprint, a complete absence of empathy combined with absolute self-control. This combination, emotional detachment and methodical intelligence, defines the most dangerous type of criminal mind. The aftermath. What we've learned. Today we understand more about the criminal psyche than ever before. Brain imaging, genetic testing, and decades of profiling have revealed that not all criminals are the same. Some act out of desperation or emotion, crimes of passion fueled by anger or fear. But others are cold, purposeful, predatory. These are the ones who haunt psychologists because they don't fit the traditional mold of madness. They aren't insane.
They're rational. They plan, calculate, and adapt. And that's what makes them terrifying. Dr. Kent Keel, a neuroscientist who has studied hundreds of psychopaths, describes their condition as a form of emotional blindness. He says, "They know the words, but not the music. They can recite the definition of empathy. They can even fake it, but they cannot feel it. And without empathy, morality becomes meaningless." Why we're fascinated. But perhaps the strangest part isn't why they kill. It's why we can't stop watching. Books, films, documentaries. Our culture is obsessed with the criminal mind. Because deep down, we recognize a shadow of ourselves. Most people will never commit a violent act. But we've all felt rage. We've all imagined revenge, control, defiance. Serial killers, con artists, manipulators. They act out impulses that most of us suppress. They become distorted mirrors, reflecting what happens when the brakes of conscience are removed. As psychologist Carl Jung once said, "The criminal is the shadow of civilization. He lives inside the same mind as ours, only stripped of restraint." Closure. So, what does it really mean to step inside the criminal mind? It means facing a truth most people would rather ignore, that evil isn't supernatural. It isn't a monster lurking in the dark. It's human. It's found in the same brain that creates art, love, and progress. The same neurons that light up with joy can also calculate suffering. And maybe that's what truly unsettles us. Not that these people exist, but that they remind us of how thin the line truly is. The difference between good and evil isn't always a wall. Sometimes it's a door. And for some, all it takes is one thought, one trauma, one decision to step through it. The criminal mind isn't born in darkness. It's born in the same light as ours, only somewhere along the way, it forgets to look back.